On Law Weekly today, our focus is on the prison and the need for prison reforms. We chat with the chairman of the Intergovernment Agency Committee on the Prison Act Amendment Bill, Mr. Wale Fapounda. We also have the weekly recap of the top legal stories from the courts. That's the lineup on Law Weekly today. Hello and welcome. I am Shola Shieli. Successive jailbreaks, riots, and the growing number of remand persons in the Nigerian prisons within the last 3 months may be indicative of the signs of the deep rots plaguing the Nigerian prison system, to which the authorities have continually turned a blind eye and which needs to be urgently addressed. My guest, Olawale Fapounda, is a former Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice in Ekiti State. He's drafted and played key roles in the advocacy of several justice reform sector bills and is arguably one of Nigeria's leading experts in justice sector reform. He is the chairman of the Administration of Justice Committee of the Nigerian Bar Association and is very passionate about the administration of justice and justice sector reforms. Today, we focus on prison reforms.
It is regrettable that many of the issues that confronted us in 1999 and pre-1999 on prison reforms are still very much with us. Overcrowding, the poor conditions of inmates, horrendous conditions of inmates, poor conditions of prison officers, and poor physical infrastructure as far as prisons is concerned. The list is endless. But I don't think that our optimism about the ability of the current administration to reform was misplaced. Because if you look at across the key personalities in government, many of those in the highest level of this administration have deep subject matter appreciation of what the issues are. The problem, it will appear as if we don't appear to be making enough progress, certainly, to satisfy many justice sector reform institutions. Now, the jailbreak is a major issue that has occurred over the last 2 months. Government must begin to listen to its own institutions. The Human Rights Commission and the Legal Aid Council have said, over years, and at least within the last 2 years, that we have a situation where keeping thousands of inmates in prisons is not just a law justice issue, but one of national security. And that's what we have seen now, The breaking out is what we have seen now. Now, somehow, we must find a way to include the issue of prison reform as an important component under Mr. President's security agenda. But having said this, the budget, I'm aware that the budget of the prison service has increased, certainly this quarter, so let's see what will happen.
When you say the President's security agenda should include prison reforms, what specifically do you mean?
The President's security agenda cannot be about Boko Haram alone, or even about empowering the police. Now, even if we get to a stage where we have a police service that we can be proud of, when our police begin to arrest those who come in conflict with the law, where are they going to put them? So to strengthen the police force at the detriment of the prison service, as we continue to see, is inimical to the whole concept of, national security. It must be all inclusive. We cannot continue to relegate the prisons, And that brings me to the issue, again, going back to this jailbreak issue. I was concerned about the manner in which the prison officers, who are said to be responsible were treated. You cannot hold those officers for a scenario that they did not create. By all means, if you have prison officers who conspired, as far as that jailbreak is concerned, deal with them. But to now say prison officers are responsible for all the problems that we are facing is simply unfair.
What specifically are the major challenges facing the Nigerian penal system today?
Political will. Number one challenge is political will. We need to prioritize the prisons. First, we need to prioritize our justice system. I don't see that, regrettably, administration of justice does not seem to be priority. And it's not just with this administration, sadly. Since 1999, I think one of the biggest, for me, one of the biggest disappointments of democracy is that we did not see administration of justice as a crucial component of our democratic experience. It's unfortunate. Anyway, we need to prioritize administration of criminal justice. The fallout of that will be giving the prison service, giving our penal system a place within that system. Now, having done that, we need to now tackle the legal framework. The Prison Act of 1972, which presently governs administration of prison in Nigeria, is not relevant. It's not relevant to the prisons. It's not relevant to the prisoners themselves. It's certainly not relevant to our own security needs. We need to look at it again and find how we are going to reform that. Institutionally, we cannot have 40,000 inmates awaiting trial, many of whom have spent upwards of 5 years awaiting trial. We need to deal with it. Again, people keep saying we cannot just let them loose. But if you cannot prosecute somebody for 5 years, what's the alternative? Governance is not a popularity contest. Somebody has to take the hard decision of, understanding that, these people cannot be locked up forever. It's a continuing and continuous security threat. We need to deal with it. So the issue of the inmates must be dealt with. The other issue, even if we are able to achieve some form of reforms in law with the inmates, if we do not take care of the interests of prison officers, we'll be back to square one. We should recognize that prison officers play an important role in our whole, reform agenda. Presently, the conditions are poor. The emotional stress does not match the conditions of service. We need to look at that. Where they even live. The conditions of, the accommodation is horrendous across board. So how can we expect an appropriate prison regime when prison officers themselves are, to all intents and purposes, no better than inmates? So we need to look at that, but again, holistically, the prison is within the framework of our criminal justice system. If we do not get our criminal justice system right, we will not get our prisons right.
So who should drive this process of prison reform? I
always say it, and people say, why do you keep, saying that? It's the president. If the president is not interested in criminal justice reform, or even now with prisons reform, it is not going to happen. We need the president to show, his interest in the justice system. It's not simply about, expressing disappointment with the judiciary. The judiciary is a component of the wider justice system. I would think that given this frequency now of these prison jailbreaks, that the issue of prison should immediately go on top of Mr. President's priority. Mr. President should drive it. It is not ministerial. It has to be presidential. Once the president says, I am interested, we need to find a lasting solution to keeping warehousing thousands of Nigerians in prison, many without trial. Then, with the progress will begin to be made. But what I don't see now, and what has not happened, certainly in the last decade, is that level of interest beyond what is said. People go to prison and say it's a terrible place, But beyond that, we need that, president walking the talk. Let us have a clear agenda on what we need to do about the prison and stop. It's the same thing. I'm sure everybody is tired now. We keep repeating the same thing. What we said 10 years ago is what we are still saying in 2016. Change needs to come to prisons. Presently, the wind of change is blowing far away from prisons.